Good evening, dear friends. Welcome to the series on Universal Brotherhood. Tonight we are going to talk about one life, about the path and the ultimate destiny of all beings. And as you have come to expect from us, we will do so in 3 parts of about 20 minutes, followed by a short 3-minute break. And during this break you can ask your questions using the chat function or email. And those questions we will try to answer before we begin with part 2. Well, without any restraint, I dare to say that universal brotherhood is the most essential of Theosophy, and therefore also the most important, the core of any organization that wants to call itself Theosophical. In fact, I dare say that if any organization has not the idea of universal brotherhood as the central objective, as the starting point, it does not deserve the name Theosophical. You probably know that the Theosophical Society was founded by Blavatsky and some others in New York in 1875. However, the real founders were the Mahatmas, masters of wisdom and compassion, the teachers of Helena Blavatsky, human beings that are far ahead of the average person in spiritual development. After the founding of the Theosophical Society, Helena Blavatsky went to India, where a few Englishmen joined the organization. India was then a colony of England. And some of them, however, were more interested in the occult phenomena or the scientific, philosophical background of Theosophy. And one of those masters, however, made it very clear that as soon as the idea of universal brotherhood faded into the background, they would cease any attempt to inspire the Theosophical Society. In fact, that would be the end of it. My point is that the idea of universal brotherhood is the heart of the organization. And if it fades away or disappears, the body, the vehicle that is the Theosophical Society, ceases to exist. Now, that idea of universal brotherhood is not an emotional thing. It's not a sentiment. We always emphasize, you can hear it almost in every lecture of ours, that brotherhood is a fact in nature. In 2 weeks we will go into that in much greater detail, but already now we can explain why brotherhood is so important to us. Brotherhood is often understood as being nice to each other. You feel a bond with your colleagues, your family, your nation. You recognize in the other a part of yourself. You like the same things, and you belong to the same culture. You attend the same parties, go to the same sporting events. And while we have nothing against that, however, we look for the root of brotherhood, which is much deeper, which is already evident in the adjective universal. That feeling that there is a bond between you and the others, we extrapolate, we enlarge by saying there is an actual bond, an existing, a real bond between you and everyone else, not only your friends and family, but all human beings, yes, all beings, everything that exists. And that bond is not emotional. You are the others. We are parts of each other. We consist of the same life. The same life blood flows through everything that lives. We are essentially one. And here we are approaching the starting point of Theosophy. That's why the master said that if the idea of universal brotherhood would be abandoned, there's no more Theosophical Society. And you know why it is so difficult for people to grasp the idea of universal brotherhood? Brotherhood is an elaboration of the idea of oneness, of unity. When you understand that unity underlies the diversity of expressions of life, then it is easy to embrace the idea of brotherhood. But people often assume diversity. They go off on what they see or think they see, and then they draw conclusions. They are under the illusion that beings, including human beings, are separate from each other. And this is why Theosophy value always starting from the universal. We must elevate ourselves to the most essential in ourselves, the universal. We must try to find something eternal and enduring in ourselves, and then we also understand the starting point of Theosophy. And that starting point is boundlessness, or as it is formulated by Helena Blavatsky in the Secret Doctrine, an omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. We speak of the boundless as an inexhaustible source, but that's a metaphor. When you think of a source, you think of a certain spot, a starting point, like the source of a river. But the boundless principle is not a source in that sense. It's not a starting point, it's everything. It's the omnipresent life. There is no place, no square inch where that life is not. It's the all. So, although every word we use does not actually reflect the idea of boundlessness, we have nothing else at our disposal as but language, and that's why we speak of a source or sometimes a sun. All beings are like rays from the sun or sparks from the same fire. At the heart of their heart, every being is the boundless. Can we know the source? Yes and no. I'm not a politician. Politicians always give such fake answers, but I will try to explain. No, the boundlessness per se cannot be known, because if that were the case, we would no longer be human beings, no ego, no being at all. For every being is limited in some respect, no matter how wide their consciousness may be. If you are the boundless per se, there is nothing to which you can mirror. There are no beings facing you. And that's why the first fundamental proposition states that it transcends the power of human conception. But still, by developing our higher aspects, our spiritual aspects, we can at least get a picture of, and we can see the truth of, and get an understanding of the oneness that underlies everything. That's why thinking about the boundless is so inspiring. It inspires, it spiritualizes. You gradually come to realize that the deepest core of every being is the same. There is spiritual equivalence. You come to understand that everything is boundless, is indestructible, is essentially equal and inseparable. And with this idea in mind, we can define brotherhood. Brothers have a common source, their parents. So brotherhood is having a common origin, a common source. Well, since everything that exists has the same origin, the boundless eternal principle, there is universal brotherhood. There is one more important element that we want to present to you before we go to our path and destiny, and it is that eternity and boundlessness imply that there are no absolute starting points. There are relative starting points. such as our birth, but we have always existed and will always exist. So our birth, our new life, is always a continuation of a previous life. We were always there in the boundlessness behind us, and we will always be there in the boundlessness in front of us. We have that in common with all entities. So there is one life, an ocean of life, and every single being, every entity, be it a man, a god, an animal, or an atom, is nothing more and nothing less than a ripple in the boundless ocean of life. And therefore, we are all brothers. We come forth from the same ocean. Yes, we are parts of the same ocean of life. We are, in fact, parts of each other. Well, although all beings are brothers in the most literal sense of the word, they are not equal. There is difference in development, in range of consciousness. But there are some principles, laws of nature, we usually call them, that apply for all beings, whether human, animal, plant, or God. There is one path that every being travels. So there is one life, and there is one path. And what is that path? Walking that path means expansion of consciousness. Or perhaps we should put it even more clearly. In fact, that path is consciousness. The more spiritual aspects of our consciousness. The path is nothing but a process of awakening. Each being becomes more and more aware of the one life, becomes more and more aware that we are all parts of that ocean of life. For us, humans, that means that there are great spiritual, yes, divine faculties that slumber and sleep within us. We go into that in more detail later. Helena Blavatsky says in the booklet The Voice of the Silence, "Thou canst not travel on the path before thou hast become that path itself." So only when we have awakened those spiritual faculties, that is, brought them into activity, then we can make use of them. Then we can realize the oneness of life. Can we see our inner divinity? When you read in the Gospel in the Bible that Christ is the path to the Father, then what is being referred to is the Christ principle, the spiritual part within us. That is the path that leads to our core, the Father. In other words, we unroll or unfold our Christ or Buddha consciousness, bringing out our higher aspects upon which we can move to the core of our being, the inner Father, so that we can realize the oneness of life. And what is the inner Father? What is the core of our being? That is what we call the monad. The monad, or spiritual or divine core, is a center of consciousness which is essentially boundless. In itself, it's an abstraction for us because, as mentioned, we cannot imagine the boundlessness. It's called a mathematical point of consciousness. Its center is everywhere and the circumference is nowhere. Well, think about that. Center everywhere, circumference nowhere. So a monad is in fact a copy of the boundless. It is the imperishable core, the power behind the outer life, yes, the power or force behind every embodied consciousness. Call it the spiritual engine, if you like. Every living being is a monad, and therefore all beings are essentially alike. Nevertheless, they differ from each other. In fact, they differ from each other by definition, because if they were equal to each other, then there would be one monad and not two or a million, or many, many millions. The differences have to do with the level of development. In other words, what has a monad already made active within itself? Has it already unwrapped or unwound the capacity to think? Yes. Then it's a human being. Then there is what we call a human monad. If not, then the human kingdom has not yet been reached. And then there is possibly an animal monad or a vegetable monad. There's a monad that passes through the vegetable kingdom. Actually, when we speak of a human or animal or divine monad, the name is not correct, because the monad is the monad. So human or animal monad or divine monad doesn't actually exist. But the stage the monad is in is that of a human, or a plant, or animal, or a god. So it travels, so to speak, through the elemental kingdom, or the vegetable kingdom, or the animal kingdom, or the human kingdom, or through one of the divine kingdoms. And of course, there are differences even within one kingdom of nature. There is undoubtedly a difference in development between a jellyfish and a fly, or a mammal like a dolphin. And of the billions of monads here on earth who are in the class of the human kingdom, there are some who have largely developed the spiritual aspects, while others are hardly ready to do so. And so each monad has exactly its own purely individual state of development, and therefore always differs from others, although, as I said, the core is always the same. In every monad there is an urge, a thirst, a hunger to make more and more of its inherent potentialities and powers manifest. That's the underlying idea why monads manifest themselves. Therefore they move into the outer world, and that happens cyclically. And therefore, the second proposition of the secret doctrine reads, the eternity of the universe in toto as a boundless plane, periodically, the playground of numberless universes, incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars and the sparks of eternity. Those basic principles of the secret doctrine always give much food for thought. And they are always universally applicable. And that is logically because that's why they are called universal principles. So every being, from galaxy to atom, manifests itself cyclically. It has periods of activity and those of rest. And in those periods of activity, it learns its lesson, through which it grows in consciousness. Can we recognize this cyclicity in our lives and in nature, in the universe? Well, that's not that difficult, I think. We really find it everywhere. For example, in our own lives, there are everywhere periods of activity that alternate with periods of passivity. For us in the Northern Hemisphere, life retreats in autumn, a rest period begins, then life returns, and spring and summer are periods of activity for most plants and animals. We humans also have these periods of rest and activity. We sleep and we are awake, but also the great sleep, death, is a period of rest, after which life returns and we are born again. This applies for every entity, from the very highest to the very lowest living being, from an atom to a god. All beings are eternally evolving monads. And we use these words highest and lowest in the relative sense because in the boundlessness there is no highest or lowest, because there are no limits, no endpoints. These monads create with each other, in cooperation, an infinity long cyclic journey upwards, in which they learn to express more and more of their latent abilities. It's an infinite process of learning in different cosmic realms. All monads, therefore, all beings, however different those evolving beings may be, belong to the one life, that boundless ocean of life. They follow the same path, to the same destiny, unification with, or the realization of oneness with the rest of life. So all these monads are traveling the same path, in the sense that they are all, as it were, on the way to their inner core. And the closer a being is to its inner core, the further it has advanced on the path. Every kingdom in nature is a stage on the path, a class in the school of life, or each stage of evolution has its own particularities, its own abilities that have to be developed. A stated man is a thinker and must develop his thinking faculties, his mind. He must gain more and more knowledge through thinking, project his consciousness further and further, become wiser and wiser, become more and more self-consciously aware of the oneness of life. Gods must learn their lessons in their class of the school of life. Gods were once human beings. They have the phase of growth that we are currently going through already behind them. In a previous embodiment of the living being Earth, the gods formed the human race. They reached the pinnacle of human development and were promoted to another class in the school of life, just as we humans will one day become gods, and animals will one day become human beings, and so on and so forth. Now, you shouldn't consider that growth process as if things have to be acquired, as if characteristics have to be brought in from outside us. That's a wrong conception of evolution, of developing, of unwinding. Everything is already within the monad. You have to take out the faculties just like you have to unwrap the present. And to unwrap, to develop those faculties, the monad has to have experience to a vehicle. Look, the monad, whatever stage it may be in, needs a vehicle, needs an instrument with which it can have experiences in manifestation. The vehicle corresponds exactly to the state of development the monad is in. In other words, every monad emanates out of itself an ego. An ego is the developed consciousness, you may call it the I or the me of the monad, and that ego envelopes itself, clothes itself in a vehicle which we call the soul. So every monad has its own ego and soul. So there is a divine soul, a human soul, animal soul, etc. The soul forms a body, and for us human beings, that's a body of flesh and blood and bones. When we speak of development or evolution, we never refer to the growth of the body. The body follows the growth of consciousness. A human consciousness has developed a human vehicle in which we can develop our mind, our thinking, and if the consciousness changes, as a result, the vehicle or the body will change as well. So a human being is not a human being because it has a human body. The reverse is true. It has a human body because it has human, or it is human consciousness. And in the past, the body, the vehicle was very different, and undoubtedly in the future the vehicle will also be different due to the fact that man will grow in consciousness. All beings have evolving vehicles, for they are all evolving consciousnesses. So every consciousness has the vehicle that suits it, based on its evolved consciousness, based on karma, the courses it has sown itself. Well, in principle, the path is the same for every being, but because each being is at a different point of development, each also follows a unique path. That is certainly true for us humans, who, because our thinking is developed, have free will. We can choose. Do we walk the path quickly or slowly? Do we let ourselves drift along on the slow stream of humanity, or do we speed up our step? Do we choose the spiritual side of life? Do we choose for the whole, for universal brotherhood? Or do we place ourselves outside of nature and be selfish? Each person, on the basis of their free will, has the right to follow the path that suits him or her. After the break, we will talk more about that path, about the pilgrim's path that we follow. But first, there is a 3-minute break where you can ask your questions by using the chat function or by email. So I see you in 3 minutes. Welcome back. Well, Astrid, I think there are some questions.
Yes, we have a number of questions. The first question is, how do you make a selfless choice when family or other people need to be rescued in the event of a fire, for example?
Well, I think you have to do your utmost best to help them. And I cannot say what is wise at a certain moment because I don't know the situation. But try to help them, of course. I don't know if it's wise to go into the burning house or because of the flames, or you have to be clever, be cool. And the most important thing, I think, is to stay calm, because you can best help other people in a dangerous situation when you stay calm, because then you get an overview of the situation and then you know best what to do. So, of course, you have to help them. You are unselfish, so you have to help them. But in what way you must help them, I cannot say because I don't know the situation.
Yes. Okay. There's a question from the chat. Why does our direction of thinking often changes so fast? I mean, from higher thoughts to the lower thoughts and vice versa.
Because we don't have, in general, a well-trained concentration. We need to concentrate each other. One of the first things the little children in Point Loma, the Theosophical Society headquarters in the beginning of the 20th century, was concentration. Learn to concentrate yourself on higher things. And you can teach children already from the age of a couple of months to concentrate on certain things. And it helps if you have an idea, an ideal of universal brotherhood, for instance, on which you concentrate your thoughts constantly, and then it's easier to focus on that spiritual side of you. And of course, sometimes you will fall back to an old level. Well, that is not too bad, because if you really want to elevate yourself to be more spiritual, you learn and you make a mistake and you make a decision. The next time I do it better. But the most important thing is concentration. And it's difficult in our time with all those cell phones and Facebook and all those things and propaganda, to concentrate on the spiritual things. But try to concentrate. And the best moment for exercise is just before you go to sleep and just after you get up in the morning. Take a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 10 or 5 if you have not much time, and then try to concentrate on spiritual things. And it will help you if you take those 2 moments just before sleeping and after the sleep.
Okay. There's a question. So there are plants and minerals whose consciousness is further or not further developed as a plant or a mineral.
I didn't get the question.
The question is in Dutch, so I have to translate. So there are plants and minerals who, in their consciousness, are further or less far developed.
Yes. There's, of course, there is a difference in every kingdom of nature. I gave the example of a jellyfish and a dolphin, for instance. Well, there's a big difference in range of consciousness. And of course, I think there is a difference between, I'm not a biologist, but in the vegetable kingdom, I think there is a difference as well. There are trees or plants who are more evolved in their kingdom than other plants or mushrooms, for instance. In my opinion, a big tree is further developed within the kingdom of or the vegetable kingdom than other plants. So fungus, that they are the beginning, I think, of the vegetable kingdom, of one stage lower than plants or trees. So yes, there are differences, and in the minerals we can't always see it because we are not aware of the things that happen in the lower kingdoms. But I think everywhere there is a hierarchy. So yes, there are differences within one kingdom. Yeah.
So could you also say that our body is a collaboration of many beings, that there is a hierarchy in those type of beings?
For sure. And I think you know that, for instance, the cells that make up your heart or your brain are more developed than the cells that make up your bones or your feet or something. And the stem cells, as far as I know, are the most advanced cells within the entire body. So there is a hierarchy within the world of cells as well.
Okay. And the last question is, you mentioned that we can never be the boundless. But in one of your slides, you also mentioned that we develop towards our inner divinity, our inner core. Is there a difference in that, or can we actually reach that inner core?
I can understand that question very well, because it's very difficult. Because if I say that you cannot know the boundlessness, which is true, because it transcends our human conception, then it seems as if you never get an idea of the oneness of life, and that's not true. Because although you never reach an end in the boundlessness, because that is impossible, because it's boundless, you can live in a way that you are aware of the fact that there is oneness in life. And if I reach my divine part, that is the God within myself, that doesn't mean that I have reached the end of everything, but in the stage I'm in now as a human being, I will be aware of the fact that there is oneness in life. But of course, when I reach that state of the inner divinity, then I will discover that there are fields of consciousness still higher, still nobler, still, wiser than what for me is the divinity. In other words, within the monad, there is the essence of the monad, and within the essence of the monad, there is the essence of the monad, and with it, etc. There is no endpoint. And there is Brahman, in Hinduism they say that's Brahman, that's the most supreme God of our universe, but there is also Para-Brahman, beyond Brahman. We have no words for it, but And that's the boundlessness. So I cannot get the boundless, I cannot be the boundless as a manifested being, because if I were the boundless, I was everything. I wasn't just me, I was everything. But I can live with the idea of boundless. I can have a conception in my mind, in my thinking, that there is boundlessness, and that I can live according to the fact that all beings are the boundless, and so that brotherhood is a fact in nature, and that I can perceive, I can know that my brothers, the older human beings, and even the animals and the plants are parts of the same ocean, the same life, the one life. I can perceive that. And, for me, personally, I don't perceive it always, just a few moments, but I can have a little conception, and if I grow in my consciousness and I will be a Buddha one day, I have a far greater conception of the idea that I am one with everything, and we can grow in that.
Nice.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we go on, part 2, Going the Inner Path.